Does it have the green light have to be on? Is it on? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order at 1:06. Ms. Boyle, will you go ahead and call, do roll call, please?
Jeffrey Anthony.
Present.
Catherine Narvisu.
Present.
Don Bell. Montserrat Caballero. Cindy Coleman.
Present.
Luis Gonzalez.
Here.
Red Morrow.
Present.
Raghu Nandan.
Present.
Peter Norquist.
Present.
Tiffany Rogers. Delia Sotelo.
Present.
Sophia Blue.
Present.
And Erica Miranda Carter.
Present.
And then just a reminder that we do need you to speak into the microphones, but just maybe wait a few seconds before you start speaking, so it'll record. Thank you.
Okay, agenda items, adjustments. At this time, I'd like to request that we move item 6.01, open meeting law, to follow 4.01, item 401.
I'll second that motion. All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all right, this is my first meeting, so bear with me, I'm consulting my notes and stuff. At this time, 4.01, approval of bond oversight committee meeting minutes from March 28. Did you all have a chance to?
Ms. Carter, we have 3.01, call to the audience.
Oh, call to the audience, I jumped right over it. Do we have anyone for call to the audience?
No, we do not.
Okay, thank you. And so now we can go ahead and do minutes? Is that good? Did everyone have a chance to review those minutes before?
Yes.
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I motion. Motion to approve.
Do we have a second? Do we have a second?
We have a second from Tiffany Rogers.
Second.
So we have a motion from Red Morrow, a second from Tiffany Rogers. And then just say all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, so now we go ahead and go ahead and call open meeting law, Mr. Rob Ross.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rob Ross. I'm General Counsel for Tucson Unified School District. And first of all, I want to thank you for all volunteering for this very important. Who would have thought 5 years ago that you would even exist, right? That's a testament to our community, our governing board, and the administration here. Since you are all, whether you know it or not, on a public body now, I want to make sure that you have the basics of Arizona's requirements for open meetings, which this is, of course. And you all have obligations under that, and I wanted to give the overview for you. Hopefully an opportunity for some questions. Can we put it in presentation mode? I also included in the packet some information on conflicts of interest. I don't know if we'll have time to do that in depth, but I would encourage you to take a look at that when you get a chance, because all of us are subject to that as well. Okay, so here are the topics today. What is the open meeting law and where it applies, the requirements of notice, what needs to be on your agendas, what you do with executive sessions if you have them, requirements for minutes, what the rights of the public are, and what happens if there's a violation of the open meeting law. So here is, here's the statutory reference for the open meeting law, and that's 38431 and about 20, 15 or 20 sections after that. And the purpose is to allow the public to be informed of what is happening in government. The Attorney General has talked about this over the years and says it's the open meeting law is intended to open the conduct of government to public scrutiny and to prevent secret decisions from being made. And anyone who tries to circumvent the law is subject to sanctions, and we'll talk about those a little bit later. Some of them are not very pleasant. Just ask Scottsdale. We don't want to be Scottsdale. So where does the open meeting law apply? It applies to public bodies and advisory committees, and you are those, and subcommittees. So if this committee creates a subcommittee, then that subcommittee is also going to be subject to the open meeting law. So the requirements of the law will have to be followed there as well. All right, thank you. So the law applies to meetings of the public body or the committee, and a meeting occurs when you have a quorum, and you have 11, 13, how many do you have officially? Voting members? 13. So your quorum is what?
7.
7, that's right. As long as you remain fully staffed. You have to keep that in your mind. How many people, if we have any vacancies now, you have to recalculate quorum in your mind and make sure that you're not communicating with a quorum, because once you communicate about committee business with that magic number of the quorum, then you should be in a meeting. The law considers that to be a meeting, and it needs to comply with the law. And that doesn't matter if you're all in one place, if you're doing it in a text chain, if you're doing it in a chain of emails, or if you're like a little honeybee going from one person to another. It is still going to be considered a meeting once you reach that magic number of a quorum. One of the things to be careful about is, when a meeting breaks up and everybody heads out to the parking lot, keep the nose count going. Are we still talking about committee business? Are we talking about U of A baseball? If we're talking about committee business, then somebody is going to need to make sure that we kick out that last person, so we're not talking with a quorum. Social events, I'd be careful about those too. We may all end up at a U of A football game, and hanging around, and if somebody starts to bring up committee business, then somebody needs to be that guy and say, nope, let's save this for a meeting, or kick out the quorum person. The last one who arrived. This should be the first to go, right? So if it's a meeting, it needs to be in public, and all the requirements of the open meeting law have to apply. So what are the basics? Notice, that's number one. You can't have decisions made in secret, and secrecy first starts with, does the public have notice that you're actually meeting? So the law requires 24 hours prior notice of any meeting. I think our committees do better than that. And usually give much more notice than that. Certainly the governing board does. So 24 hours prior notice. Notice in this district is mainly on the website, but also meeting notices are posted in the window box at the central office at 1010. So people, for all those hundreds and hundreds of people who wander by 1010 East 10th Street, they can look at the window box and see what's happening in the district with committees. And the notice has to be to the public and all the members of the committee. So you'll also be getting emails about meetings in addition to what's on the website. Just a little war story on that. I was in another district in Colorado, and there were committees that didn't like some of the people on the committee and wouldn't tell all the committee members that they were having a meeting. That was a problem in Colorado too. Similar open meeting law there as here, and of course we had to put a stop to that and make sure every member of the committee had notice. So notice to the public and all members of the committee. So the agenda. Now the meeting notice is what's required by the law. The agenda is the specific list of items that are to be discussed or decided. And the Attorney General has had several opinions on this and wants to make sure that the agenda items are not, are clear enough that a member of the general public would reasonably know what the topic was that was going to be discussed. That doesn't mean that all of the supporting materials need to be available. We do a really good job in this district of doing that if they're available, but that's not the law that requires that. That's just good practice if it's available. So what you should be looking for in your agenda items is just think of that reasonable person on the street. Would they know we're going to talk about something? If it's just, you know, a statutory reference, that may not be enough. If it just says we're going to talk about the bond, that's not enough for this committee. You should have a little bit more detail on what your specific agenda items are so that someone off the street would know. If the committee goes off the agenda item, which can happen in a healthy discussion, you may get on a little sidetrack that's really helpful, but it's not part of that agenda item, so you all should police each other on that. It's mainly the chair's job, but all of you should be aware of that and say, wait a second, that sounds like a really good topic, but that's not on the agenda. Let's put that on a future agenda and then get back to what's on your agenda. And feel free to ask questions anytime here. I prefer this as a conversation than just a speech. All right, executive sessions. I don't anticipate this committee having many of those. But if you do, there are only a few reasons that the law provides for executive sessions, and that's where you meet alone without the public, right? The public would be excluded from an executive session if you have one. So some of the reasons that you could have it is for legal advice. This is just training here. This isn't legal advice. If you have a specific issue on, you know, whether something was a violation of the open meeting law, that would be a legal advice session. I would recommend that be in an executive session, and we can discuss what it was and whether it needs to be remedied. But just having this discussion isn't legal advice. There may be other issues that come up, possibly that you need legal advice, and either myself or our Associate General Counsel, Michael Aronoff, can come and speak with you about that. If that comes up, we'll want to make sure that that is on the agenda as well. That's not something you can just normally stop and do. It'll need to be on the agenda as well. Just means the public can't go. Negotiations, this committee probably will not be engaging in contract negotiations. That's for the governing board and administration to do. But that is a reason for an executive session. Personnel issues, again, this committee doesn't supervise personnel, so that would not be something that this committee could do, but it is a lawful reason for an executive session. Here's one that might happen, I can envision. So some of the issues that are on the bond are security-related items, right, for schools. That, by statute, you know, security arrangements are protected by law, the records of security arrangements for schools. So if there's any reason for this committee to get into details on what security arrangements are, that would be a lawful executive session. That's possible. I don't see that as likely. That seems like administrative detail. This committee might be looking at priorities related to that, but if it comes up, that is a lawful reason. And again, these would all have to be on an agenda, right? You can't just stop and say, I'm going to an executive session. You need to have one scheduled. I lost my steering wheel. So executive sessions, they're private, the public can't come in, but they're not secret. So they're on an agenda, right? And minutes are required to be taken. So the public may be excluded, but there's still going to be a record of it. Now, very few can look at those minutes. The Attorney General can look at the minutes if there's a complaint regarding the open meeting law. Members of the committee can look at the minutes. You know, you were there, or if you weren't there, then you were entitled to be there, so you can look at the minutes. And the staff who's preparing minutes can look at it. But they are still required to be kept. Okay, meeting locations, they have to be accessible. Another war story there is there was a snowstorm again in Colorado, and all the roads were closed. They were still going to have a board meeting to talk about closing schools the next day, and they locked the door of the building, and the board was almost 45 minutes into the meeting before someone realized the door was locked, and they had to stop and do it all over again. So the meeting location has to be accessible, has to be in a public place. It doesn't have to be in a district facility, but we have plenty of facilities for you. You can move to a larger place if necessary. If you get a pressing crowd and it won't fit in the room that you're at, then you can move it to a larger place, but it has to be in the same location that was in the notice. So, for example, you couldn't have the notice say the meeting's at Duffy and then decide, well, if we have too many people, we're going to go to the auditorium at Catalina. You can't do that because that's not the noticed location. But if you say you were meeting in the library over there and you got too many people and you want to move here, that's okay to do. Even though the notice said Duffy, library, you could move to Duffy multipurpose room if you needed to. You just couldn't move off the campus here. There may be occasion where you have a virtual meeting. That's something that some of our committees have done. Those also must be easily accessible, so you can't have a paid download to watch a public meeting. It has to be for free. And the ability for the public to view the proceedings live. So having the meeting and then posting a recording isn't enough. There has to be real-time access to the meeting. And the notice should give instructions. If it's going to be a Zoom meeting, then the notice needs to have the Zoom link for the public to log in and take a look at it. And again, you may have subcommittees, so you may want to do those by electronic means. You just need to make sure that you're following all of these committees rules. Okay, the quorum. So we talked about that a little bit. In order to have a meeting, you have to have a quorum. If you don't have a quorum, it's just like a fun conversation. You can't take any action if you don't have a quorum. And once you have a quorum, then you're subject to the open meeting law. We talked about the parking lots. Emails are really difficult. That's how we live these days, right? So you may have a nice email chain going with 6 of you, and then it gets forwarded to another person, and now you're suddenly, without even really thinking about it, you're now into open meeting law violation territory. So be careful with emails. Now, here's what's okay. If you can email the entire committee to say, I'd like this topic on an agenda. The Attorney General has said that's okay. But no more discussion on the email chain after that, right? So you can say, I'd like to have the topic of chain link fences on the next committee meeting. That's fine. You can send that to everybody. But once you have a conversation about that with the group, then you're potentially in trouble. You can also email the entire group about logistics of meetings. That's not a violation. So if someone says, emails and says, look, I'm not going to be able to make the meeting on next Thursday, that's fine to do in an email to the whole group. I don't know why you'd want to do that. You probably just email the chair, but if that's okay to do, it's not a violation of the open meeting law. Staff members emailing detailed information to the whole committee is also not a violation. It's you talking to each other that becomes the violation. The way that becomes a problem is if you start using staff as a tool. Okay, I'd like you. I'm giving you this information. I'd like you to talk to this person about it, and then talk to that person. And once you get to basically communicating from one board member through someone else, that's a way of trying to circumvent the open meeting law, and the Attorney General isn't thrilled with that. All right, phone calls. Not many phone calls happen these days, but that's be careful of those as well. That's kind of that daisy chain sort of issue too. If you start, polling people around by going from one person to another, asking them to ask another, once you reach that quorum issue, then the Attorney General doesn't get happy about that. And we talked a little about social events. Just avoid talking about board business with a quorum. What our board does, what our board office does, is if there's going to be, and we know there's going to be an event where a quorum of you may appear, then they will post a notice on the district's website to say that a quorum of the committee may appear at this event, but it's not a meeting and no committee business will be discussed. For example, if you're all going to a concert at Tucson High School, and the board knows that, they will issue that notice so the public knows. You may see these people together, but they're not having a meeting. They're just community members doing community member stuff. That happens regularly with the governing board, not so much with our other committees. Okay, minutes. Minutes can be recorded or written, and we have a great system here with board docs that we have. We have our recording going here, but the board doc system will create the minutes for you basically as it's happening. Minutes have to be available to the public within 3 working days. Usually the recordings are up sooner than that, so that's great. And that satisfies the Attorney General. So as long as we have the recording up, we're okay. And executive session minutes remain confidential with only a few people access to them. So what needs to be included in the minutes? When and where, and who was present and who was absent. A general description of the matters considered. Now this is great because your agenda pretty much does that for you, right? It has the topic of the discussion, what's going to be discussed, so you have a general description of what's going to be considered. And an accurate description of the decisions made. Again, board docs helps out with that. It will have your motion listed in it. Sometimes we even put a draft motion in board docs, so it's all ready to go. Your minutes are almost done before you even started. And then the names of the members who propose each motion. If you're following Robert's rules, and it looks like you are, you've got someone making a motion and someone seconding that. That's recorded in the minutes. And then names of individuals making presentations. So my name is going to be in your minutes. And any action that's taken. You're not going to take any action on my presentation today. For example, if Mr. Hernandez gets up here and makes a recommendation for something, then the minutes are going to reflect that Ricky Hernandez made a presentation, and then any action that you take based on that. So the public has a right to come to your meeting, and they have a right to listen. They can record if they want to, as long as they don't disrupt what you're doing. And another war story, this one when I was in Texas with someone who claimed to be a documentary filmmaker, who was going to right up to the dais with his camera right in front of each board member's face while they're having their meeting. That was disruptive. But if he'd sat in the back with his camera, that would have been fine. What they don't have the right to do is to disrupt your meeting. So in Tucson Unified, the governing board has a policy that says that all of its committees have a call to the audience portion of your meeting. That's the time for the public participation. Anything else from the public during the meeting is at the discretion of the chair, and that's probably not going to happen because once you're done with hearing from the public, you've got work to do, and it's unlikely that just general members of the public are going to be invited into that. Okay, not working? So what happens if there is a violation? So it's a potential civil penalty if you are intentionally trying to circumvent the open meeting law. Doesn't happen very often. It did happen last year, again, in Scottsdale. And there have been a few other school districts and other governing bodies that have intentionally tried to circumvent, and there's usually a report that says don't do it again. But if it's truly intentional, then it's likely there's going to be a fine given to not just the person who violated it, but anybody who helped them violate it. So this will never happen, but if you call me and say, hey, we'd like to talk about this, but we'd like to not have it on the agenda, and I figure out a way that you do that, which I wouldn't be able to do and I would never do, but we would both be in trouble for that. So it's anybody who also helps you try to do it. I can't remember what's next, but I will, at this point, I'll stop and see if there are any questions at all.
Yeah, Rob, on the quorum, is it any 7, or does a chair or vice chair have to be involved in it?
Nope, it could be any of you. But Ms. Ekstrom doesn't count. She's not a voting member. So, so you can always include her if you want to. But yeah, it doesn't matter if it's the chair or just any other random assembly. So everybody's got to keep that mental number rolling in their head. Okay, so back to disruptions. If there is a disruption of your meeting, then you can kick out the person who's being disruptive. And I always encourage a lot of warnings on the record before you do that, before you pull that card. So call to the audience, again, that is not required by statute, but it is required by our board policy. And there are very few things that the committee you can do if someone makes a comment to call to the audience. You can respond to individual criticism. So, if someone says that, you are a horrible committee member and you never come to meetings, then you can respond to say, actually, I think I'm a pretty good committee member and I've been at every meeting. You just look at my attendance. If it's just a general criticism of this committee is a waste of time, I don't know why the district's spending money on it, just spend the bond money. That's not an individual criticism. That's a general criticism. That's just a public comment, right? So you should not be responding to that. It's individual criticism. You can ask staff to review a matter. And you can ask for something to be placed on a future agenda. That's it. That's all that the law allows you to do. And the reason for this is because most likely, whatever someone's coming up to speak here and call to the audience isn't on your agenda. So it used to be that you couldn't respond at all, and then the Attorney General wrote an opinion and said that's not fair to the body. You're a public body, and the community may not think you're responsive at all if you don't say anything. So the Attorney General said, well, we're going to let you do these 3 things, and then they put it in statute. So now it's by statute that you can do those 3 things and only those 3 things. If the topic that the speaker's on is on your agenda, my recommendation is wait for that agenda item to come up before you respond to the speaker. Okay. Oh, thanks. So we've gone through that. The penalties, $500 civil penalty, also attorney's fees. I think I put that twice because it's really important to me. And again, anybody who is intending to deprive the public of information is going to be likely targeted by the authorities for that. All right. So any actions you take in violation of the open meeting law are going to be null and void. You'll have to do them again. If that happens, for example, you make a recommendation, you vote on it, and then somebody realizes there was a mistake with the agenda, then that would be null and void if it wasn't properly noticed. And then you should contact the legal department, and we'll help you work through how to fix it. There's a ratification process that has a few steps to it, basically putting it back on an agenda, making sure it's clear that it's a ratification of a prior action, and we can help with that. Most of the mistakes that happen are unintentional. Almost all of them are. Just an oversight. Something drifts in a discussion and someone makes a motion and it was in the flow of things. Nobody intended to violate the open meeting law. Those are, you're not going to get hammered for that. It's just that we have to go back and fix it at your next meeting. All right, questions? Any other questions on open meeting law? So if you do ever have a question, any of you can contact the legal department. Either myself or Michael Aronoff are happy to answer the questions. We're also happy to come back and have further discussion on this. If you come up with issues, we can have another conversation about it. Again, also included in your materials is information on conflicts of interest. Basically, you as public officers cannot participate in any decision in which you or a family member has a financial interest. Yes, sir.
To what extent do we need to preserve any notes we take at these meetings?
You do not have to preserve your notes. If you have notes, they may be subject to a public record request. if they qualify as a public record. They could also be subpoenaed, potentially. I haven't seen that happen in 18 years, but it's possible. So you don't have, there's no requirement that you preserve it. What needs to be preserved are the minutes of the meeting, and those are permanent records. They never get destroyed. Yes, sir.
In regards to communication between members, there's communication between members at more than a forum on an issue that will be coming up before the committee for a vote. Is that a violation?
It's a technical violation. If it's unintentional, then that's okay. If the conversation continues, then that potentially could be a complaint to the Attorney General, and they would probably issue a decision saying that that was a violation and you should not have done that. And if any action resulted from that, then we would probably have to go back and do it again. So, you know, it's again, it's a technical violation, and that's the way that the Attorney General often puts it in their opinions when they've done an investigation, is that, you know, there was an unintentional inclusion of more than a quorum, or of a quorum in this conversation, and the discussion resulted in you know, was reflected in a decision that was made at the next meeting. It was unintentional. They shouldn't have done that. They should go back and do that again with proper notice and have the discussion in a meeting. That's usually what the remedy is. If it's intentional, then that's, you know, like, hey, let's include, we know this person is going to make a quorum, but we need their opinion on this before we even present it in front of the whole group. So let's get their opinion. That sounds intentional to me, and there could be penalties for that, you know, including the potential fine or removal from the office, in addition to having to go back and fix the open meeting law violation through a public process. Does that make sense? Yes, sir.
Yes, Mr. Ross, if we do have a question, what is the best way for us to contact you and your department?
Okay, you can email me at robert.ross@TUSD1.org, or you can call the legal department at 225-6040.
Great, thank you.
And you can ask for me or Michael Aronoff.
Or who?
Michael Aronoff, he's
Michael
the
Aronoff.
Associate General Counsel. Other questions? All right, again, anytime, happy to come back. I may drop in on some of your meetings in the future anyway, just out of curiosity to see how things are going with the bond. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ross. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and move on to item 5.01. Did everyone have the opportunity to review the charter that was emailed to you?
Yes.
Yes.
Any questions, suggestions, changes? No? Just take a motion to. Okay, so at this time, I'd like to take a motion to approve an as is.
I'll approve.
Thank you. Do we need a second?
Motion by Redmore, yeah. And then you need a vote.
Okay,
Second.
second by Ms. Rogers. Let's go ahead and take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Point of order. We need to have discussion before you take
Okay,
a couple items into the,
Can you,
turn on your
turn on
your microphone, please.
To get closer?
before you take a vote, you need to have a discussion. Now?
It doesn't sound louder.
Now?
No.
No, button, pull it towards you.
Yeah, you have to pull it toward your face.
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
I do hear you.
So it's a point of order. You need to have a discussion before you vote. I have a couple of items that I want to discuss
On the charter, regarding the charter?
on the charter.
Okay. Mr. Gonzalez, go ahead.
Okay, on page 1, on the first page, the second paragraph. I'd like to discuss, well, it's the first paragraph, it's the mission, where we say the purpose is to support the board and the district leadership in achieving. I'd like to get this more alignable to align to the resolution that the board passed on the purpose of the committee. And the resolution itself says, whereas the board desires to engage the community in to publicly and transparently monitor, track, and advise the board. The current language here appears to say that the only thing that the committee will do is support, but it's really to advise. And so I would just suggest that we add some language here before the word support to assist and advise. Or we would read to assist, comma, advise, and support.
I like that.
That would be a change that I would recommend to it. I understand we have a motion on the floor, so this will take an amendment to do this.
Is that the only recommendation, or?
No, I
at
have
this point?
others. I have a few.
Okay, so
But if
should we go ahead
anyone
and
wants
vote
to
on
comment
each
on this
one?
one, that'd
Okay,
be
so-
fine, and we'll move to the next one.
No, I'll comment in support of your point that it is to advise. And support kind of sounds like we'll just go along with what the governing board says.
Okay,
And that's not going to be always the case, I don't believe. So I would support the advise notion of what Mr. Gonzalez said.
Madam Chair, can we get a clarification of whether that's okay? Because I would say, like a legal question, because I would say, I understood the same thing, that it was to make recommendations to the board, but I want to make sure we have clarification of that language, like what's legal to say. Thank you.
Good thing I hung around, huh? So this committee can you will make recommendations on charter revisions. Those will go to the board, and the board will have the final say on those. So if you make changes here, then that doesn't mean that that's in effect yet until the board takes it up. And they may make changes themselves based on suggestions that you make. That's happened before. But usually they want to honor what the work of the committee is. So what you're doing here now will be sent to the board, who will have the final say. Does that answer it?
And how do we go about like officially getting the changes to the board? Is there a template, or how do we go about doing that legally?
So if you get to a product that you want moved to the board, then either myself or Ms. Ekstrom can help with that too. We can get, or your chair. We'll make sure there's a board agenda item at the first available time on the board agenda, and perhaps you'll want your chair or other members of the committee to represent you, or Ms. Ekstrom can, as well as the board liaison, represent the work of the committee. So you've got several options. Ms. Borboa can help from the board office as well. But usually those things they'll come eventually through me to make sure that the agenda item properly follows the open meeting law, and that the board will know what they're voting on.
Thank you.
We're moving on to the next one, or did you want me to do an amendment now?
So are we going to stick to support and advise, or what was the final?
Would you reread what your proposal was?
What it would be, before the word support, just insert assist, comma, advise, and then it would read assist, advise, and support. So you would add assist, advise, and the word and.
Is there a motion to accept the change?
Well, we're not changing, if I'm understanding right, we're not changing, we're submitting our recommendations to go to the board.
Well, this is just a draft, so I'm assuming that
Yeah,
this is what we're gonna
it's our
be.
recommendation, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's our recommendation to the board that we would like this changed. We're not changing it, we can't.
You're going through that process now.
This is a draft that we.
Well-
Right.
You want to make sure you include the recommendations of changes that, like Mr. Gonzalez is offering, in the form of a motion and properly seconded and voted on, so that those can be included, and then once you've got the complete product, then we will get that to the board for their approval.
That's correct, and that's my understanding of it, is that we have the ability here, if we're going to work under Robert's Rules of Order, you have a motion on the floor now, and so it can be amended. And once we change that language, then it goes to the governing board for review and approval or modification, whatever they want to do. But that's a final authority, is the board of governors. So I think what we do here, we don't have a charter yet, but if we did have one, we'd be under Robert's Rules of Order according to this charter recommendation. So I would suggest that a motion needs to be made and then that voted on, or we can go through all the changes that I'm recommending, because there's a few of them, and then make one motion for all of them,
For all of them.
or one at a time, either way.
I would just recommend if we are gonna do it one at a time.
What's that?
I would recommend if we are gonna make any motions to change, that we do them one at a time.
All at the same time? Or
One at a time.
One at a
Each
time, yeah,
each
that's
one
what I would,
individually,
that's
just
what
so
I would
everybody
suggest.
can
Also, I agree with that,
have their
because there are
input.
some things here that people may not agree with.
So,
What I'm hearing is that I can make the motion that, or I move that we add assist, comma, advise, and to
support.
that particular sentence before support. So that's my motion.
Okay,
Just as a.
And I'll
point of-
second that motion.
Okay, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Just as a point of discussion, I would like the word assist removed and just advise and support.
Are you moving a motion to the amendment?
There's, go
So
ahead.
I just moved,
Yeah.
and she suggested that we remove the word assist
Just advise.
So
to
just,
just advise and support.
sorry,
Oh, okay.
I don't know I don't know exactly what's going on. But I think Mr. Gonzalez has a motion on the floor, so,
Yeah.
right, your motion is the amendment to this language,
The
or
motion
your,
was
its
made
amendment
by Cindy,
for this first one. Okay, so Cindy's making that
and
motion.
I seconded it.
And you seconded it,
So there's
okay.
a motion to amend
Okay.
the main motion at this point.
Mhm.
Is it Catherine?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, Ms. Arvizu
yeah.
is making an amendment to the amendment.
No, that's okay, she is.
Yeah.
But if you accept her friendly amendment, then we can go ahead and vote on that, but let's
Yeah.
do
And-
it in order.
And going
Yeah.
further, if Cindy accepts the amendment, then we'll just vote on the amendment
Yes, yes,
of the motion that she made.
yes. Sorry, go ahead.
So I'm actually going to accept that friendly amendment to remove the word assist and just leave it at advise and support.
Thank you.
as
So
the
that was your second on her
Yeah, you can
motion.
call for it.
Okay, so
That
at this
works.
time, let's vote on adding,
Are we on? Yeah.
is it on? Advice and support instead of just support. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Mr. Gonzalez, you said you had more recommendations?
On section B, the scope, number 2, approve project proposals recommended by district staff. I think that kind of says the only thing we can do is approve, and I believe we ought to be able to modify if necessary. So I would add some language before the word approve that says review, comma, modify, and approve. And I would do that for both number 2 and number 3.
That was approved, modified, and
I don't
Same
think that-
language.
I don't know if our committee has the ability to modify a proposal.
we can make suggestions though,
We
right?
can make suggestions, we don't have to approve, but I don't know if if modifying a proposal or is something that our committee would be able to do, but I'm unsure.
Well, does the committee have the ability to disapprove?
Of course.
Yeah.
Then why wouldn't it have the ability to modify and approve? If you can disapprove.
The projects are aligned to the bond package that the voters approved, so we're,
Yeah.
you know, the projects are set out based on the bond package that the voters approved. So you can't tell us to do a project that is not within the scope of the bond, for example. You can recommend modifications, so for example, if we tell you that we wanna put a, you know, an 8-foot perimeter fence around the school that costs X, but you know that a 6-foot perimeter fence is gonna cost Y, you can ask us to go back and make those changes and come back to you.
But it's not, this committee is not making those
But you're
changes.
not
making
We're
those
giving you a
changes.
recommendation
Correct.
for a change,
Yes,
correct?
Okay, so let me ask staff, Mr. Hernandez, the suggested language, in your opinion, is not proper?
This is, which, the current suggested language?
The language that I'm suggesting.
The modified word, I would qualify, like modify, recommend modifications to staff, for example, would be more appropriate than to modify. So
Okay.
we want staff to go back and redo it, that's something we can do, we will come back and say,
Okay, yeah. My intention is not to modify the proposal itself.
right, the proposal,
Yeah, we want to avoid, not that we want to avoid, but we want to offer the opportunity for staff to work on these proposals. If they need to be modified at the request of the committee, we want to take that feedback back so that staff can then go back and modify those proposals and bring them back to you to a point where they're satisfactory. We don't necessarily want you to say, we don't want you building 8-foot fences, we only want you building 6-foot fences, for example, right?
So would recommendation be a little bit better than modified?
I think recommending modifications would be a little bit better, just to give staff the opportunity and, you know, the experts that they work with to come back with more information so that you can make a decision.
Okay, so I will modify my language
You're going to modify the modification.
to basically say review and recommend, as Mr. Morrow has suggested.
Like, I took notes and said approve or recommend modifications.
That reads fine.
Recommend modifications.
On item number
Right?
2 and item number 3.
So what was the
I
final?
agree with that.
Ricky suggested recommend modifications. Mr. Hernandez.
Well,
It's whatever you guys want.
Mr. Hernandez, does that work for you?
If it works for the committee, at this point, I mean, it's at your discretion how you want the language to sound, not mine. I'm just advising as to why we want to make sure that we narrow the scope of the language.
Okay.
So-
Recommend modifications.
I think he went.
Is that appropriate?
That's appropriate.
Okay.
Recommend modifications.
Mr.
Because then that means that we have to go back and do the work to modify.
Yeah.
Agreed,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mr. Hernandez, so just to clarify, you would like to change 2 and 3 to read recommend modifications versus, just take out the word approve?
No, keep approve, because that will be also
Approve
part of
Do you
our
want it-
scope, yeah.
So it'll approve and recommend modifications?
I'm okay with that.
I think it needs to be approve or
Or-
recommend
or, yeah.
modifications.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the or.
Approve.
And so I would move that language, that amendment.
Will you please put it in the form of a motion? Mr. Gonzalez?
The language that was just described here, the couple of changes in the language, I think works for Mr. Hernandez. And if it works for Mr. Hernandez, it works for me.
Okay, so I'm sorry.
I'll wear that as a badge of honor, Mr. Gonzalez.
Sorry, I might have missed something. So what exactly does number 2 say? Approve projects and proposals or recommend modifications by district staff?
I think it was just approve or recommend.
Approve or
Modifications.
recommend
Project proposals.
Yeah.
modifications to project proposals by district staff?
Right.
Yeah. May I make a suggestion?
Wait, okay.
For that, just to insert one more word, approve or otherwise recommend modifications for. Just for the sake of clarity, would that be acceptable?
That sounds better.
Sounds good.
Okay, so now do we take a motion?
Would you like to make a motion?
That's
Yes.
for 2 and 3, correct?
Okay, so for number 2 and 3, then I propose a motion to amend the language that reads, approve or otherwise propose recommendations for project proposals and so on.
Okay, will we take a second?
So I withdraw my motion to amend and move Mr. Norquist's amendment.
Can you restate your amendment one more time, please?
Sure, I'll
Just-
try to. So one more time, I'm proposing an amendment to the language that would read,
Pretty simple.
approve or otherwise propose recommendations for, and then continue. Project proposals recommended by district staff in number 2, or project scopes of work to develop requests for proposals in number 3. Staff recommended project scopes, excuse me.
Gonzalez, if he accepts that amendment, or, because he just said he withdrew, so now we have to have another.
Mr. Gonzalez, do you accept that amendment?
Yes, well, that's his amendment, and I approve that. No problem.
Okay, so did we have a second on the motion?
Second?
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
I have a question on the scope for Mr. Hernandez, whoever wrote this. Whoever wrote the charter recommendations. Is that you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. The question is, number 5, we have timelines, progress, and all of this. What seems to be missing here is reviewing or approving staff recommendations for RFP awards.
For what now? I'm sorry? For awards?
For awards, once you
To-
award them.
To
When
vendors, you mean?
When you're coming to the committee for approval, right, you haven't awarded them yet.
Yeah, so you'll have a presentation next month about how the RFP process in the district works, but just to answer that specific question, you do not award contracts. That is reserved to the governing board. So once you authorize us to issue RFPs, and we go through the process of developing one, that is, like I've mentioned before, that is a self-executing process, right? We will issue an RFP, follow the process for evaluation and selecting of a vendor. Once we have a vendor selected, we go to the governing board and they decide whether they will approve or deny a vendor for a specific bond project.
Okay,
So we will not
So
be
we don't have
bringing,
anything
no,
else.
we will not be bringing awards to this committee.
got it. Okay, moving on, I have one other item under membership. Item C.
Okay, so,
Under membership, item C, there are 13 members, and what we're saying here in the second sentence, the 13 community members are appointed for terms not exceeding 3 two-year terms. In the next sentence, it says, the board liaison will have a term of 1 year. And after that, it says, all committee members may be reappointed up to 3 terms, and all committees are uncompensated. Should that number 13 be 12? Instead of
We
13?
have 13 committee
No?
members.
No, it's 13 plus the board member. So it really is a committee of 13.
okay.
The board member is a liaison.
Yeah. I did it
Um,
wrong.
Even though she's an elected board member, she actually doesn't get to vote here.
Okay. Moving on in that same paragraph, the language here that says the committee shall annually elect a chair and vice chair. It seems to be open-ended to mean that the chair could be elected forever, as long as the committee is active. And so what I'd like to do is put a limit on the number of consecutive terms that a chair could serve, so that other members would have the opportunity to serve.
What
Does that
limit?
make any
which-
sense to anybody?
Which limit would that be, or what?
Well, what I would suggest is that the language, the chair and vice chair shall not serve more than 1 consecutive term. That means you'd have to sit out a term if you were elected again in the 3rd year.
So let's hear the motion on the same paragraph.
That gives
same, on
other
the
people an
membership, the same
opportunity
Okay.
to serve as chair or vice chair.
The only discussion I'd like to have on that is if we as a committee are happy with the performance of the chairs, it almost sounds like we're forced to turn over, where I would like that not a written thing, is we maybe have the option to discuss a new chair, because if we're happy with everybody and it's running well, I don't know that we really need to do that every year.
I would agree with Mr. Morrow, especially since like when a new chair gets to like that 1-year point, they've just hit their stride and running these meetings. So I think it would be fine, like if we, that's our choice, right? Like I agree with that too.
Maybe
And
an
that's
annual,
like-
maybe
If we
be
want
an
a new
annual
chair,
That's
we
review.
also
elect a
the
new chair.
concept of an election.
Yeah.
Like, we are already committed to the election process, and so that gives opportunity for other people's innately by an election.
Maybe have an annual review.
But we have the annual election and
Yeah.
also,
Well,
yeah.
I don't want to get into the weeds on that, but there's reasons why you want to limit terms. I would go as far as saying that 2 consecutive terms is more than enough, which would give the chair 2 consecutive terms, and then someone else would want to take over. I'm concerned about when you have a chair serving for too long, it could create some problems amongst members. And in order to avoid that, we need to have a shared responsibility in terms of chairing and vice chairing the committee. That's all I'm concerned about at this point. So if we did some language here that the chair and vice chair shall serve not more than 2 consecutive terms, I'm okay. I'm okay with that.
So do you want to go ahead and make a motion on that? See if
Well, I'd
someone
like to hear
second-
what committee members think about that.
I think,
Yeah,
I agree.
Well, if you look at the regular terms, it's 3 two-year terms, so that's 6 years total. So
an annual
what
election.
I'm understanding is that we potentially could have a chair every 2 years?
It says annual elect
Yeah,
chair,
annual.
so it's you could have a new one every year.
Well, it says annual, you're still gonna be voting every year, but you could elect the same chair for the second year. So it's an option. And that's where your discussion comes in that you were referring to before.
I'm just
Yeah.
gonna-
I think the election gives us the option, and it's important that, I mean, by the time you hit your stride, like that was heard before, you'll reach a year. I think the election gives us the option to replace a chair, and I think that's sufficient.
Is there a motion?
Well, I'm not making a motion, just one more comment. I just wanted to say that I'm sympathetic to Mr. Gonzalez's reasoning, not for any personal reason, and I've never seen a problem with TUSD, but in other venues, sometimes if there are no term limits, there can be suspicion of collusion in some ways. And so I think that this would circumvent that in the way that he's proposing. So I don't see a big problem either way, but I could see where that could solve some potential issues from the point of what the public sees.
And to continue it, if we were gonna have a limit, I think 2 years is good because it kind of matches the term of the other members too.
Okay, so would somebody like to, that would be the recommendation, the amendment, a 2-year max for the chair?
Is that your motion?
Well, I would recommend then no more than 2 consecutive terms.
Is that your motion?
And I just want to clarify on the terms, because there is two different
Yeah.
periods of terms here. So the committee members, our term is 2 years, but in here it says annually, so to me, the chair and vice chair almost is a 1-year term. So maybe that's something we need to clarify as well, that, you know, what is a term for the vice chair and chair? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It kind of, it's different
Yeah.
terms.
The
I think we
the
should
motion clarifies that with the current language, because it only applies to consecutive terms. So it does address that. Instead of 1, it would be 2. And it would read like this: the chair and vice chair shall not serve more than 1 consecutive term, period. And that only relates to the chair and the vice chair term.
But I think
Then we need
your
to do
recommendation
something
was
with the
2 years, or
annual
somebody
either.
suggested 2 years?
Right, what's the name?
Well, you
So
already
my-
have annual.
My suggestion to clarify along what Red's saying would be to say 2 consecutive or 1 consecutive 1-year term.
Okay.
Put that in.
Okay.
So that we know the difference between the membership term versus the leadership term.
That
So
doesn't.
what is the motion? Is there a motion?
No, there's.
Is there, so what is the motion? Is there a motion?
So I'll move that motion. It would then read, the chair and vice chair shall not serve more than 2 consecutive 1-year terms.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Let's see by hands, just to make sure that we get an accurate count.
You can always ask for a roll call.
I'm sorry?
Roll
We can ask for a
call vote.
roll call vote, that way it's easier.
Okay.
Jeffrey Anthony,
Yes.
Catherine Arvizu,
No.
Don Bell,
Yes.
Cindy Coleman,
No,
Luis Gonzalez,
What are we voting on now?
on your language, so you're a yes.
Aye.
Luis Gonzalez, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Red Morrow,
No.
Raghu Nandan,
No.
Peter Norquist,
Yes.
Tiffany Rogers,
No.
Delia Sotelo,
No.
Sophia Blue,
No.
Erica Miranda Carter.
No.
Yeah.
It was no. I'm trying to count up, so I'm sorry.
So motion didn't pass. Motion fails. At this moment, I would like to ask Mr. Gonzalez,
To 2 years.
Are there, do you have several more recommendations
I
on this?
do, I do.
So with
look,
that, we
I
have
don't-
several individuals here that are here to present with us, and I'd like to be respectful of their time and that they took out of their schedules to be here. So I would like to make a motion to table the rest of the charter for our next meeting, continue with our recommendations at that point.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so with that, we'll go ahead and move now to item 5.02, review and approval of bond projects and priorities. With that, we have Dr. Carter.
Use my big voice, right? Can you hear me okay? Yes. All right. Well, good afternoon, Bond Oversight Committee. My name is Dr. Charlotte Carter. You can call me Dr. C. And I am now a Tucsonian. I moved yesterday, and I thought it was super important for me to be here so I can see your lovely faces and you can get to know me and we get to know each other. And I just want to preface this. This is a partnership to me and we're collaborating together. So just want to start there. And I am excited to start the partnership right now and just kind of tell you about some of the things we've been discussing. I think I've been on board 3 weeks now. And so I've been already working with the amazing staff and starting to really understand, the overall goals and accomplishments of the bond and what it can do to the community. So let's get started. Our agenda today is going to be the bond issuance, to give you an update, the project priority list criteria, the proposed project list, and I did say proposed, the Bond Oversight Committee feedback. That's where we want the feedback from this committee because we believe that you represent the community and the students and families. We also have the Bond Program Office staffing. Want to give you an update on that. And then next steps. And if I'm going too fast or too slow, let me know because I'll get to know you and you'll get to know me. All right, we want to give an update on the interest rate. We actually had 3.86 versus 5% plan, so something we're super proud of. Our first issuance is $150,928,103, and those proceeds we expect the week of April 22nd. So guess what? We have money that we're going to be able to spend. And so that's why I think it's super important for us to start communicating about those things because we want to hit the ground running. But as you guys, as we know, that sometimes with ordering things, you want to get that sooner than later so we can show that progress. And then the first debt service payment will be made on or by January 1st, 2025. So do you have any questions on that? If not, I will proceed.
Madam Chair, I'm wondering what the amount of the debt service payment is in January of '25.
Mr. Ricky, which is also my boss.
The first payment is estimated to be about $7 million.
Is that an annual payment or
It's a biannual payment.
Thank you.
And I'm so excited and so glad to have great staff members that will be assisting me and subject matter experts. Okay, thank you. So now we want to kind of talk about the priority and the criteria. Like, how did we ground with this? How did we come up with what we believe the priorities could be? And again, this is a proposal. So we believe that data should be directing our thinking. And so that's what we did as we start looking at the priorities. Because as you can see, and as I read the bond book, there are a lot of projects. And this is a 10-year bond. So we don't have to do everything tomorrow. I think making sure that the quality is there is super important, and that we're looking things comprehensively. As you know, you've been introduced to some of my qualifications. I've done multiple bonds before. In Tulsa Public, we had multiple bonds going at the same time. So looking at things as a system and looking at the way you can make sure when you're doing things that you're thinking about interdependencies. Also, I'm a certified project manager as well. Okay, so with that, the Facilities Conditions Index was a main criteria, one of the main criteria, and we can talk a little bit more about that later. The surveys, administration was given surveys, and so we got feedback from them. Also believing that it's super important that when you're doing something for your customer, so to speak, the students, the families, the teachers, that you include them in building that. Instead of just telling them what you feel, we should be building around what their needs are. Also work orders, because sometimes if we are continuously repairing and doing things over and over and over, it may be better in the long run to do something different. And so work orders were definitely considered and weighed in the criteria. And then there's a such thing as vendor and district capacity. As you know, you have to look at, if we're hiring vendors, what are their current capacities? And then also the district as a whole, because if we're doing so many changes and all of these things are happening at the same time, we have to make sure that the teachers and the students, that when we implement things, it's adopted and that is being put to the best use. I've seen in my past and experience where you're rolling so many things out, people are not really adopting or using those things because they just don't have the capacity, because also we have to be teaching students as well. And then the other thing that I added as I was pondering and thinking about the bond and how we might do the best, and that's what we're interested in, is doing the best, not just putting something out there, but having the quality service, is the complexity and the risk, and trying to make sure that we don't have exponential risk to the district, because we want to make sure that we're doing everything decently in order. I'm gonna pause there. Does anyone have any questions about just not the details of how we did the list, but the criteria in general? Okay. And you guys can, talk to me.
I got a question.
Sure.
How do you come up with the FCI?
So,
I was going to ask that too, Red, but.
so I'm going to defer to a subject matter expert,
Right.
which is Damon. We did talk about this, and we knew it was coming up, so we're prepared.
Good afternoon, Bond Oversight Committee. My name is Damon Ballesteros. I'll be the program manager for the implementation on the construction side. So Facilities Condition Index is pretty much an industry standard, and it's a rating system that our facilities department uses from 1 to 5, 1 being poor, 5 being new or recently replaced. And these scores are identified and conducted during preventative maintenance that's constantly going on by our technicians. To give you an example, if a technician is called out to do some preventative maintenance on a package unit at a particular site, they're there, and what they do is they will pretty much document, once a repair is done, what type of repair was done, how old the unit was, how many times that they've gone out there, and really provide a score that is relevant of the work that they've done on the site. So those scores are captured in Facilities Condition Index report, and we have FCI scores for a majority of the main components throughout the district. And those main components are roofing, HVAC, parking lots, pavements, sewer, water lines, plumbing, electrical, your main 7 components in a building infrastructure. So that's how we quantify and really prioritize the needs at each site by having that facilities condition index score relevant for each site.
So when, if I can expand,
Yes.
so once you come up with the FCI in a certain category, how do we decide what site do we take that FCI in that category and we go from number 1 to number 10 and we go to like the oldest site first if they're in most need of parking lot? Or how do we prioritize that the FCI is being used so really the oldest or the most need site gets that first?
And that would be the best way to word it, the most need. So if sites are identified, say you have 5 sites identified in HVAC as an FCI of 1, then you again, as Dr. C mentioned, you go down to the next criteria. So we'll consult with our HVAC technicians, take a look at our system of record, which is famous Facilities Asset Management Index System, and it'll provide detailed analysis of how many work orders, how many times our technicians have gone out to make a repair. So now we have this FCI score, and then the next component is, okay, now we meet with our HVAC techs and take a look at how many work orders, and that's really gonna identify which projects get pushed out sooner.
Okay. Is there any flexibility in the FCI to where, let's say, site A is higher than site C, but we can show that site C really needs it more than A?
And that's where the work order system comes into play, because those work orders will identify, say both units are 20 years old, the amount of work orders that are needed on a particular unit will dictate which one really will surface to the top as a priority.
So it's a working, breathing document.
It is, yes, it is a dynamic process.
Okay.
We actually just met with facilities this morning. We update it quarterly, and as projects are done, there's a closeout process that we follow to make these changes on our reporting system.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that was a really good question, because me coming as the new person, I had questions like that. What happens if a site has both the same scores? I mean, it's possible, right? And what do we do and how we look at it? So I do want to say, from what I've seen so far, that we are following the data, but there's also, besides just the quantitative data, you have qualitative data. So that survey helps you with the qualitative data. So it's not just one, or it's the comprehensive. And so thanks for that question. Right. So I'm going to read this list, and then I'm going to ask Ms. Yolanda to briefly go over the documents, so just so you can see the format and kind of the frame of that I was thinking and we were thinking as a team. And I do want to say this is a team effort. It wasn't just one person. We really believe to have the best, you have to have cross-functional, because you need to see line of sight. And sometimes the facilities, they're thinking about facilities, or, IT's thinking about IT. We want to be thinking about it holistically, and then present, and then get your feedback, because there may be some blind spots we're not aware of as well. So the thing I do want to preface this with, this is a 10-year bond. So we don't have to do it all right now. We want to show what I'm going to term, and I hope the district allows, progress is promise. We did that with one of the mayors at TPS. Anytime that there was a major project that happened, she had signage, and so they put the signage and says progress is promised. So there was a visual to the community to know where their dollars were going. I think something like that could really go a long ways. Now, we have to work all that out and see if that's something we want to do. But I just want to remind you that you have to start somewhere. And in project management, and I'm sure other different type of disciplines, it's super important to do what they call benchmarking. I mean, sometimes you go slow to go fast. And so, especially since we're new, my understanding, we hadn't had a bond in a while, and our exterior environment is different. You know, after COVID, it takes longer to get materials, just on and on and on. So the idea, what we're presenting to you for this time is for Q1. These projects, we believe that we can deliver with quality by October 11th. So that's where we're starting. And the idea is to have some benchmarks on, you know, as we move forward, what works, what doesn't work, just to be able just to have more informed and schedules that are close to what actually reality is. So just wanted to put that to your attention. So we have HVAC package we think is super important, especially going into the summer. I've already experienced some heat, although it is hot in Oklahoma as well. But my understanding, you know, that is a real community need, and I'm sure students, everybody wants to feel comfortable to learn. Marquees, we thought that was a project that was important. The AEDs, and we know all about and seen different things that's happened in sports and different things, and just having that availability. And then technology. There were several things that the technology wanted to do over the summer and that October timeline to be able to meet the needs of the students. That includes laptops, active boards, chargers, hotspots. And I know in the past, a lot of times with IT, you do things in the summer while the students are gone, so when they get there, everybody has what they need and have an awesome start of school. So if we can put up the overview of the list, I believe you guys got that this week, and I just wanted to explain how this is organized. The overview one is the one that has the top, the projects, the actual document. Can you pull that up, please? So on the document, do you guys know what I'm talking about? The one that has list of projects?
Proposed project list?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So the ones in green are the ones that we're proposing. But I also listed a list of other projects that we thought it's possible that we can do. But, and in that document, we also wanted to show, so if you, the committee, wanted to do some different priorities or ask us about different priorities of projects, you could have a cost. And these various projects, we have gotten quotes and estimates on the ones that we are proposing. So I'm not sure on the list. Can I see someone's list until we get it on the, so it says proposed project list, quarter, and it has the first thing, it has the HVAC. It shows how many, so the format is the item, so that's not the priority, it's just listing the item. The second thing is the project list, so it's the little description. Then it's the priority. So if you notice, the four, the ones that are in green, we felt all those are priority one. That doesn't mean the other ones are not a high priority, but we looked at as a system what we thought we can accomplish based on vendor feedback and quotes that we could do well for October 11th. And so the next column is schools. So we wanted to know the actual how many was in that list. So you would know that this is impacting X number of schools. So that was the thought behind it. It doesn't mean that it means for what we're trying to do for October 11th. So it doesn't mean that there's only 8 marquees that are going up. Does that make sense? It means that 8 have been identified that we want to target for October 11th. So what we're doing is what we call a phased approach. But we're going to continue to based off of the bond because we have to finish all the projects based off of the bond book. Yes,
I
ma'am.
just have a quick question, sorry.
Sure.
So when you have designated phase one, priority one, phase one, whatever, are multiple phases already been established and priorities already been established past phase one or priority one?
Great question. So right now, we just have this phase. So what the thinking is, if you allow me, and allow the team, is to come back in May with a broader phase. Normally with projects, you're gonna go out a number of years. I believe if I understand, Mr. Ricky said that, the first monies that we're receiving is for phase one, right? We're not comfortable yet going in and projecting out 3 years because we want to have what we talked about, these benchmarks to kind of see where we are.
Right.
And in our environment.
Just like when we're talking about HVACs, right? So to say, okay, right now 14 schools are getting HVACs or whatever. Like I would like to see at some point, like no rush, like we're just getting started, but like start to finish every single school who would anticipate getting a new HVAC system and potentially which phases are, understanding that maybe phases 3, 4, and 5 are like TBD, right? But
Sure.
to say, like, and I know that's part of the bond book as well, but there's like additional things that are coming in here too, like marquees. Like if 8 schools are getting marquees, how many schools are all getting marquees? And if that's like a part of communication, just future.
Absolutely. And so that will help. Doing it this way helps our understanding to inform to do that. So we will go backwards, right? We start here, you go backwards. At the end, we're going to do, I don't know, say 50 HVACs, which I know is way more than that, right?
Right. But
And
just
we-
like at the end of the day, when we call it said and done, our goal is to have.
Correct. And so we'll have phase one, phase two, phase three, phase four. So we know that bond book, total numbers, they match. We may not know those dates yet, but we know it's going to be in lumps of phases because what we'll find out here is about how long it takes if we're doing it multiple during this time frame. So when we do set the number that we think we have a capacity to do based off our vendors, based off the capacity, based off the risk, all that, then it could be more formed. But we will have both. So I'm looking forward to that, but just not quite yet. Awesome. Thanks for that question. Yes, ma'am.
My question is, you say quarter one. Is that like quarter of the phase or quarter of the school year? How is that
School
determined?
year.
Okay.
It's school year right now, because our thinking was, we want to have progress as promised as soon as possible. And what greater way with some of these particular projects that we have right now. And then eventually it will align with the ways the phases of the money is happening. So it's 3 years. So I would love to be able to say for these 3 years, this is what we're projecting, because the money is going to determine. You don't want any times where the money, you don't know how much money you're getting and when. At Tulsa Public Schools, the way ours is set, we knew we had money every 6 months. So I'm planning in the future what the next 6 months is going to be. So all that's, it's top of mind. It's just we're not there yet. But yes, there would be where the phases and all that is going to eventually be aligned as we get to know what our capacity and how fast we could go. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
So I see October 11th.
Mm-hmm.
The money is coming next week.
Mm-hmm.
Is this a completion date or a start date?
This is a completion date.
Okay.
So what we're saying is we believe we can do these projects and have them done well by October 11th, which will inform us as we're creating an overall schedule. We'll end up at some point, I'm not saying right now, don't say I said right now, to do the whole 10 years. But I think we need to get the little chunks, because what you don't want to do is do a project schedule for 10 years and you're missing all your dates. That's not good practice. Yes, ma'am.
So the defibrillators, are those all coming at once? Because it's just a product.
Yeah, from my understanding, so what we're saying on the defibrillator is the 60 9 of those we want to have complete by October 11th. I don't know the exact dates and all that, but these are the ones working with the vendors, working with the departments, working with, looking at it holistically. This is what we believe we can do.
I have questions about a few individual items. Is this the right point to ask those questions?
Let's make sure that we have this general one, and then the next thing is the details.
Sure.
Yolanda, do we have the
It's not letting me bring it up the way it's
is
done.
it,
So.
the PDF is not letting you bring it up?
It's not letting me.
Okay. So bear with me. I'll have to kind of look from here, and we'll talk about it, but I'm sure we can take care of it. Do you have someone over here, general question? Is it on the general topics, or is it details about schools? So,
My main question is, are we pretty confident on the list that we compiled regarding AC units and work orders, that it is an up-to-date and current list, that these are the needs? What if we have one school that needs 19 units or whatever unit, that they do in fact need that many units?
So yes, we're confident, because that was one of the questions that I've been asking, to make sure that the data is the correct data. We will, I know Damon and his team has gone over it, so I feel confident that this is the right list. We can go next and talk about any specific things you have, but remember, it's more than just FCI, it's the multiple things that we're looking at together with the work orders and all those other things.
My main reason for asking that question is, as I was speaking with Ricky and looking at the proposed fencing, my neighborhood school is Borton, and just about 4 years ago, we campaigned for a security fence around the school, the perimeter of the fence, and Borton is listed as a school that will be getting a new fence. So for me, that kind of makes me wonder how many other projects are on here that should not be on there.
So let me have the subject matter expert. We did look that information up and wanted to make sure we had an answer for the committee.
Yes, good afternoon. So the site was not Borton, it was actually Borman. So it was a
It was
typo.
not Borton?
No, not Borton. Borton, we were successful back in 2018
Right.
to obtain the funding from Pascoyaki to do that southern portion. And as we looked further in, it was Borman, not Borton.
Okay, and
So-
with that, I'd also like for us to, it's not related to this, but I've mentioned to you that I felt that that project was a little rushed, and now having so many fences going up throughout schools, I do worry that that may be the case then. I know when Borton was first set up, the goal was, let's get it done before the first day of school. And I understand fencing has to be, lined up. So when they went out there, they set up that fence, there was pretty significant gaps under the fence that no one followed through on those. And like I mentioned to you not long ago, the ceiling on that fence was never completed, and that fence looks terrible now. It looks like it's been there for many years when it's fairly new. So I would like to ensure that with so many fences going up through our schools, that we are going to have some kind of follow-through, making
And
sure that.
yes, most definitely, and Dr. Carter will get into basically a quality control plan that we have in place now as part of our closeout process. In regards to vendors, prior to them getting a final payment, we have what's called it's pretty consistent with our AIA contracts with any contractor. There's a 5% retainage fee that is held with each submittal or payment application. 5% is held back so that when they're done, there's an accumulation which is called the retainage fee that we hold until we do the final closeout and all the documents, and everybody is fine with the project, and it's until then that they'll get the final payment.
Okay, thank you.
And speaking of quality, because I listened in a little bit on actually, I was part of the meeting last time, and I believe someone talked about quality, and I've had actually a couple of cross-functional meetings where team members were saying how important it is to have quality. So I do want to mention this, that quality is super important to me. I'd rather have something that's done right and take a little bit longer than have just something done to check off a box. I don't think that's good stewardship for the district to do it that way. So I'm going to be asking the hard questions. How do we know? How have we measured? And I will be, from time to time, and it won't be every single project, but and what we did at TPS, that person responded, we do walkthroughs. And so you can spot check because, I mean, it's possible, and the other thing is tracking. You know, you have to do a good job of tracking, and that's how we're going to be populating the dashboard. But you're only going to be as good as your tracking is, and then you confirm. You know how they say trust but verify? I do that a lot. So, but we do want to make sure that the data is correct and provide you what's accurate. And if there are things that you find out that aren't, if you can email me, and I will be the contact, and we can just make sure that we follow through on that. I think it's super important.
Can I just add one thing really quick too? Sorry.
Mhm.
The quality for me is the most important thing, and then second to that is preservation of the historic nature of our district. I think that we have a very unique district that spans the entire city. We have some amazing historical sites that need to be upgraded in an appropriate manner to match what the school is and how it was originally built, to match the preservation of the district. So that's a major priority for me as well.
Thank you for that. Okay, so I haven't forgotten about you.
No, that's fine.
I did want to kind of go over, like I said, just finish out on why I listed what we listed. And if there's other data or things you would like to see that makes it easier for you to let us know. This is a method that we've done, I've done before, but every committee's different. What people want to see is different. So I'm not married to this if it doesn't make sense or you want to modify. So talked about priorities. We talked about the schools, which schools is really talking about the impact, and then cost. These are the costs based off of the quotes that we have. So that those should be real numbers. So if you can go down just a tad bit. So the ones in green are the ones that we talked about for quarter one. We listed these other things because all of these are important. And this is not the whole bond book. We can't, as we were looking, like, how do you put that in a manageable way where people can really make informed decisions? And so under repairs, besides just the HVAC and marquees, you have pavement and parking lots, and you have interscholastic, so it's field repair. So that's just an example. So if the Bond Oversight Committee says that, we really feel like do less HVAC, but parking lots are way more important and have the reasons why. This was so we could have a conversation. That's really the way it was formatted. So we can have a conversation, but also this is what we feel confident in based off of the quotes, based off all those criteria we talked about that we can deliver for October 11th. But beyond, we can work on these other things. Now, if we go and find out that, man, these vendors are awesome, all our equipment came in early, we have monthly meetings. And so we'll present, you know what, we think in September we can do another 15 of HVAC, or we can, tackle this other project. So I don't want to say that this is just hard and fast, that there's no way we can do anything else. But this is what our starting point. And now I'm gonna go to you. Oh, the only other thing on here, if you can go all the way down to the bottom, so it follows that same pattern all through those different sections, which match what's in the bond book, because we wanted to have apples and apples, is that the proposed cost just of the green things, the four things we talked about, we have the project cost. We added a 5% contingency, so that's what we're talking about we would have spent by October 11th, barring us not making some changes. are you guys coming up with some other priorities that we feel like we can do? Any questions about this document or any suggestions on how to make this document better?
I have one request. Could you please send an Excel or CSV file or attach it to the board docs? Because the PDF, because I'm creating my own internal metrics to see where the spending's going, and to convert it from the PDF into a readable Excel took me quite a bit of time. And since I know you already have an Excel, I prefer that, or a CSV.
Probably Excel would be the best. I don't have a problem with that.
What we will do is we will send it directly to Yolanda to distribute to the entire committee.
Mm-hmm.
To send it to one committee member.
Well, yeah, that's what. Yeah, I'm asking.
Yeah, but we will only publish PDF on here. Okay, we will not. We can't publish Excel or CSV.
Okay.
Okay, so for this, so we're saying in the future, to the committee, we can do it Excel, but we won't be publishing Excel. So that's not a problem. Thank you. Someone else had their hand up, or anything about this topic before we, okay.
I do. Is this the first wave of fences, or is this all the fences that are going up?
This is a wave, and right now, we're not showing fences as being one of those items for October 11th. So only the green items. So we do find that security and fencing is important and want to do, but not the first wave. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. This,
can you tell me more about the marquees and why that's like a priority item over like access control or security window film?
I wouldn't say it's over that because it's all important. It's based off of, like I said, the whole thing. It's based off of what we can do, the vendors, the quotes, it's all of those things. So we have to start somewhere. So it doesn't mean that one's over the other. It's just what we selected based off of the capacity, the quotes, that whole thing.
I'm not sure if is it on?
Yeah, you're good now.
I know in the past, marquees have not been paid for by TUSD. They're normally grants or donations. Going forward, will TUSD be helping out with the expenses of, and will we be selecting vendors that will have a warranty to cover any outages or damage to the marquees?
Yeah, what we currently have is we have, the technical term is a mishmash of marquees across the district. Some are installed by PTO, PTA groups. Some have been installed through donations from large organizations. Some have worked through the facilities department. And that's why you've gotten this just inconsistent quality throughout the district, is that there hasn't been a standardization per se on how those are installed and who installs them, right? One example is the Mansfeld marquee was installed by the PTA. That one has a lot of problems. It is among the ones that we would like to replace. Right. We are able to commit bond dollars at this point to the marquees that need to be upgraded or repaired. The goal is to try to get them to look to be digitized, to be digital, to be electronic, versus the ones where you're kind of shuffling the letters like the old cinema style type marquees. And they will be incorporated into the facilities, just essentially what the facilities department is going to do in looking at any kind of piece of equipment to invest and make sure that we keep up. Purchasing in the future outside of the life of the bond, that is a to be determined component. Unfortunately, going back 10 years, the reason marquees were not a priority is because the limited dollars in capital funding that the district have, marquees they were not a priority over, a lot of the other components that you see on this list today.
And my concern is more the maintenance of these that will be going up and being replaced, because I know that come monsoons, even the Borton one that is fairly new, first power outage, it went out, and it keeps going out. So thankfully, we did have that 5-year warranty. I don't know what vendor we're going to go with, but I just want to make sure that these schools will have assistance from TUSD going
Yeah,
forward.
and we are, one of the things actually we've talked about is ensuring that through our facilities management system that we actually track warranties, not only for marquees, but for anything we are purchasing, to ensure that we're holding vendors accountable to applying the warranty before TUSD takes any action on it. We don't want to send our guys to do fixes when a warranty is available to do it for us. Obviously, if there's an emergency, if one of these things falls over, right, is laying in the middle of the street, I mean, we're going to send a guy out there. We're sending, to take it out of the street when there's like a safety concern. But otherwise, we are going to exercise the warranty options to the extent that they're available and that they exist for different, for different components.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
All good questions. Okay. I was going to go to the details because your question's detailed and you had some detailed questions, right?
I'm done with my.
You're done? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. There we go. Can you make it a little bit bigger? I'm wise. I'm not going to say older. I'm just a little more seasoned. I have to. Okay. So this is more of a list by school and by region, what the estimates are. And then actually, these are not estimates anymore. Those should be the actual quotes, correct? Okay. So I need to update that. Note to self. So just wanting to, and it's not in any priority order in this outside of the priority in general. So on item 1, that's just the item that's listed. So it's a category in the voter pamphlet on the column. So you could do the matching. It's the school name, it's the region ID, and the region name. So those two should marry up, right? And one of the things too was just having a view into who's getting what in the region and having that ID associated with it. And then it would be correction where it says estimates. Those are the quotes, because we felt like to really be able to give you accurate information, we need to be getting the information from the quotes. And then there's a total. So if we can just scroll down a little bit. The first part was security fencing and gate. The next section, so all of those are, and then, okay, go up just a little bit. So that's access control. So that gray bar, the fill, that's letting you know we're going to another section. So the next section is access control. And so you can scroll through there and you will see, who, based off of the criteria that we talked about, that we felt like needed to be prioritized. Not the first priority, first wave, first phase, but that also are priorities. So you can just go through and see that. So if you look at the sheets, the overview that I just showed you in the detail, those documents go together, if that makes sense. All right. So we can go back to the presentation, or if you have the detail, are you wanting to ask questions about this detail right here that's on the screen?
So my questions have to do with individual items, the HVAC, the defibrillators, and the LED lights.
Okay, go ahead.
So, okay, so starting, the defib question I have is short. And just in reference to what you mentioned earlier when you first began speaking, you said that you, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember exactly what you said, but there were certain trends that you felt were alarming and indicated that we needed to bring these defibrillators in. Could you talk about that in more detail?
And that was just Dr. Carter talking. I mean, I didn't do the research, but
No,
I
that's
do.
fine.
But I do have. Well, it is. He's not here. I don't have my subject matter expert. I was speaking in terms of what I've been hearing about some of the athletes. If you remember, and here again, I'm going way out on a limb. But anyway, the Buffalo Bills athlete that ended up, I think, almost dead, but they had the defibrillators where they were able to help and assist him.
Sure.
There was also, so wasn't saying as a trend. I'm just saying these are things that are openly and being said, but it could be a trend. But the other one that came to mind was LeBron's son.
Yeah.
That was an incident as well. And then we've had some things at TPS. We had that as part of our bond. We wanted to make sure that every building had a defibrillator and the staff knew where it was, because that's the thing. If you don't know where it is, it's just like not having it. And then that there was training. So, those are, I guess, more qualitative than quantitative, but it's things that I've heard of, and I would hate that if TUSD had an incident and we, didn't have those things.
No, absolutely. I'm all in favor of including the defibrillators in the budget and having them on hand if they're necessary. My ears perked up a little bit when you were speaking earlier, and it sounded like there may have been some sort of quantitative difference, and I was wondering what you might be able to say about that.
What we can do, I'm sure do we have any of that quantitative data that Mr. Gah has? We can have him for the next meeting to speak on that.
That would be
I'm assuming we can, Greg, if they want some, and would you rather have someone speak on it, or should we just as an action item come back with you with some of the empirical data?
I would love personally to have both, to the extent that it is feasible for you to do that without too much hardship.
Oh, absolutely not. I think, I know he has the data. I don't have it in front of me, but I think that's a good thing for us to explore more.
Okay. Yeah, and again, I want to clarify, I'm in favor of the defibrillators. I'm just interested in the data that you're mentioning right now. So thank you.
Yes.
The second question I had, let me go back to the other document. In relation to the HVACs,
yes.
Part of the wording in the document we were supplied with talks about also installing energy management control systems, and I wanted to ask for clarification. What is meant by that?
Do you want to come up and address that?
So again, good afternoon. So the emergency management control systems provides an opportunity for our HVAC team to actually see the site real time at our facilities department. Majority of our sites right now that have been identified have outdated controls. Some are running on Windows 98, and it's not compatible with the software. And what we try to do with the energy management control systems is exactly that, provide set points that our team in the shops can identify and see when those trends in temperatures are rising in a particular classroom, where they can adjust but also maintain the energy component of the site. So that is the biggest component for the energy management control systems, is really updating. Some don't even have, some are just regular thermostats, which are not energy efficient. So we want to make sure that, again, we provide both at the same time, because again, it provides that virtual window for our shops to identify and really take a look at when those spikes in temperatures occur, to really get out in front of it and see what's happening at our site.
Okay, so I appreciate that. Thank you. More specifically then, so you're able to observe externally, multiple sites, what is going on. Does it also allow for external manipulation of, for example, the temperatures?
Yes.
Okay, so the reason I bring this up is because of a couple of incidents that happened fairly recently in California, where they were using smart thermostats, and it allowed them, under the pretense of being able to be more energy efficient, to have someone else reach into homes and control the actual temperature, and it resulted in adverse effects to senior citizens in the cases that I'm aware of, because they were locked out of their own controls and they were not able to either bring up the temperature in the winter months or bring down the temperature in the summer months.
And again, those are trends that are very, very important at each site, and each site is going to be different. And that's where we provide a standard for our temperatures, a range, and we use the range based on the Arizona Department of Health and Services. They have a range of temperatures which correlate with the Arizona State Department of Administration for Education. There are temperature ranges that our sites need to meet for minimum adequacy guidelines. So that's what's going to help tremendously and really address those concerns, because we'll be able to get out in front of it and say, you know, there's a temperature that's really too high. Well, let's take a look at virtually and what's happening on the site. And this is a little different. The energy management controls, because you said a smart thermostat.
Right.
They're two totally different components.
Okay.
They're going to be regular thermostats, but they're going to be hardwired to the system, whereas smart thermostats are more wireless and identified more sort of with Bluetooth. These are all going to be hardwired to a system, an energy management control system at the site, not run by Bluetooth or wireless.
Okay.
And they're two totally independent units.
No, I appreciate you making that
Yes, sir.
clarification. So just to be clear, finally, before going to my third question, then there is no situation if we were using this system that people on site could get locked out of being able to control the environmental controls?
No.
Okay. Yeah, that's my concern. So I appreciate you addressing that.
Yes, sir.
And then my last question is in number one.
Hold
when
on
it
one
talks
second. I think there's another comment.
Okay, sure.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Greg Meyer. I'm the Director of Facility Management. I just wanted to weigh in on the EMCS issue because this is one that's a topic I really like to talk on. A lot of times in the schools, what we see is, especially with the chiller systems, the big cooling units that we have, which help supplement the package units that we have on the roofs of the schools. What happens in many cases with these chillers and the control systems is that you'll have one classroom over here, it's perfectly cool. The next one to it is 90 degrees. So the teachers go, how can that be possible? Well, the reason why it's possible is because the controls don't work right. So you have controls that are defective in some cases, and so that's why you have those variations in the temperatures. So our goal with all this is to make sure that when we're done with everything, this is our chance now to get the district straightened out. And, you know, because you all remember what happened last summer. There was 50 some days over 110 degrees. And it was a crisis for us. It really was. We were on the news, we're all this and all that. And so we just want to make sure that through the whole bond process, and like Dr. C is saying, this is going to take a while. But the thing is that we want to get the controls taken care of, because if we can do that, we're going to be in a lot better shape. So we're just hoping that, again, that we want to try to make as much progress as we can with the HVAC up until October 11th, because every one that a system that we can get replaced, and again, the package units are pretty much pick and place. They go in there with cranes, pick up the old one, put the new one in, hook it all up. Well, it's probably a little bit more difficult than that, but anyway, you know, it's an easier thing to do, and it's so exciting. Every single one that we put in is another school that we can just check off. I've got 12 technicians for 88 schools. So we have to rely on contractors to help us because we want to make sure the kids are in a good environment. And so with that in mind, it's important that we upgrade the equipment. And I certainly appreciate all of you being on the committee and helping us with this, because every time that we make an improvement, it's just another great thing for the kids. So I just want to weigh in on that. I've been kind of patiently waiting over here, but I saw a chance to address all of you and just tell you how much I appreciate all of you being here and being a part of this. So we'll be looking forward to having more conversations as we go on, but I just wanted to put in a couple words here quick. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
May
Fourth
I ask-
question?
Yeah, just one more, Ms.
Okay.
Carter, if I may. So under the project descriptions, number one, B and E both mention LED lights. B, install new LED marquees at sites. E, replace and upgrade field lighting to LED and be dark sky compliant. I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit more about why LED, what potential options there are, what's the thought process? No, that's great.
Again, great
That's what
question.
we need to do. Okay.
So what's currently at our sites are, I'd say predominantly fluorescent lights.
Okay.
And fluorescent lights are consistent with a yellow hue. What we're trying to do is be a little bit more energy conscious. Our governing board is looking at going green and sustainable. So we're looking at providing opportunities where we can make improvements to our sites with LED lighting. And again, the LED lighting is much more energy conscious than your standard fluorescent. And the T12 bulbs that come down, there's less maintenance involved in going out and changing. The service life is much longer on an LED component in comparison with our current fluorescent lighting. So that is the biggest component on why we're looking at LED lighting throughout as far as improvements.
Okay. Besides LED and fluorescent, are there any other options potentially or in theory, like halogen, for example?
So halogen, again, industry standard, we're looking at K12. It's very, very consistent with LED lighting. Halogen is going to be used more because it has a bright hue. Halogen is going to be more consistent in a business commercial environment where you need direct lighting that is extremely bright. One of the things that I've learned through the process as we go through the installation and reading literature on LED lighting, the lighting and the brightness is a big factor in a student's learning. If the hue is too bright, there's definite factors that go into play in the overall learning environment. And halogen, because of its metal halide, the lighting brightness, it provides a negativity in a room because our classroom heights average between 8 and 10 feet. So when you disperse a halide light, the brightness and the glare is just too abundant on, whether it's a MacBook or our Chromebooks in comparison with a LED lighting at those heights. And that is the biggest component.
Oh, okay. So then a quick question about that then. In either of the cases mentioned here, in my understanding, these are both outside. You're mentioning
Those two,
it's
yes.
difficult inside. So that makes sense. But in the case of outside, so we've got field lighting and marquees. I don't really know what a marquee is, I have to admit.
So again, a marquee is going to be placed outside of the school. It's usually located along the front of two classification streets, whether it's a main street or a collector that is adjacent to the site. It provides an opportunity for the school to communicate with the constituents on what's happening at the school, provides opportunity for PTA to provide information, and really lends a hand so that it's another arm of the school to really reach out to the community and share what's happening on the site. We recently, over the last 2 months, we do have a standard now for the installations of the marquees. We have a standard height, we have a standard LED component, and the warranties are going to be fairly consistent, and those are going to be 5 years. We're using 2 vendors that have recently installed for us, and we're going to use those standard details and specifications so that we have consistency throughout the installation from here moving forward.
Okay, then final question, and then I'm done.
Yes.
There are part of the reason I'm asking is there have been a couple of people who I know who know more about this than I do, so I'm not prepared to say more now, who have concerns about the optical effects of LED lights. Excuse me. If there were a reason for concern, is that something that we could bring up at a future meeting, or somehow put before you for consideration?
Yes.
I think yes. I mean, there was some data that said that, but I mean, from our research, it's this.
Right. Okay, all right, so that would be the proper protocol.
And that would lead them to your response.
Right, no, that would be super. And like I said,
Yeah, great, yeah.
yeah, I'm only asking because other people have mentioned it to me. I don't have any specific data at hand myself to talk about today, so I just wondered what the protocol would be to bring that back up, if for some reason it seemed to be a concern.
Okay.
So, but I appreciate your time, and also you, Ms. Carter. Thank you for
Yes,
addressing those
yes.
questions.
And I think too, the district is trying to be LEED certified, so whole certification, we want to, are in green, you know, very much is on top of mind. Try to do green and
Okay.
support that for the earth.
Mm.
Okay. So let's go back to the PowerPoint. We went over the projects. Let's go to the next slide, please. And thank you guys for being patient with us. I think we go back one more. So we went over the projects. We answered some questions. We just wanted to give you a real quick update about the bond program office staffing. I'm the first, and I'm here, and I no longer live in Oklahoma. And so I'm here to stay and to do whatever I can to serve. And you have my commitment to do so. Then the administrative assistants, I checked with on the applications. We have 15 applications, so that one's already been posted. So we'll be reviewing applications, forming panel reviews, going through the process. Then as far as the procurement agent and the budget analyst, or the accountant, is going to be posted this week. So we've been fiercely working and trying to get the right descriptions out, and then having the right interviews and getting the right people. One of the things that thinking about the bond is really thinking about the transparency, the accountability, the customer service. You know, those are the guiding principles. And so those are the type of people we're looking for, people that want to support that in accuracy. So, and the construction manager is in final process. And so soon, real soon, I believe we'll have a full staff. And I'm super excited because it does take everyone. And then I have the support, or we have the support of the staff. So it's not in a bubble, it's cross-functional. In the last slide, I believe. So you might be wondering, what are the next steps? We want to, we're working on the dashboard. Now, I know they've reported on the dashboard before. I have a ask of you. My ask of you is that we would like to give you a little homework, and we want to share with you, it won't be today, well, it may be today, but at least by end of Friday, share with you the link of the dashboard for you guys to give us some feedback. We believe that it's really important, and like I said before, to get the feedback from the people you're designing for. You represent various people in the community, so we would like for you to give us some feedback. That would probably be in an email form. Yolanda, would that be where they send it to you directly and then you give it to me, or how should we go about getting the feedback about the dashboard?
Yeah, they can send it to me, and then I can get everybody's responses, and then we can send it to you.
Okay, and so the thinking behind that is that we could have feedback before the May meeting. So if you guys could make a commitment to, this next week to come back with your feedback, then that gives us time. And I'm not saying we can do everything that people are asking, and even the dashboard, we can keep, it's not a one and done thing. As we keep growing and we have more projects, and we can look at making updates and changes. So that's my ask for you. Somebody tell me what this time, a week from now, what date is that?
25th.
So 25th of April, feedback. This is your opportunity to let us know if it's the type of information you want, is it the detail you want, And so one of the things we worked on this week was having some examples of real life data. Now, we haven't started officially. We have to get the approval first. But the projects that, like the HVAC that we propose, we have one thing in the dashboard shows you all the areas for the first 14 where they're located. So we tried to use some data so it kind of made sense based off of what the projects would be based on, what we trying to get this approval. We're gonna complete the hiring process. I can't tell you exactly when. I would love to have people on staff by the end of May, but I'm not sure. You know how the process takes a while. I can't see her. I'm gonna have to. Can we get bigger name tags? No, just kidding. I'll learn everybody's name. Like was suggested, we're gonna give you the next phase. I want to get a year, 2, 3 years, but we'll at least give you the next set so we can be looking for that and then go out further. Initial bond projects. Now, this is if we can get the approval the first week of May. I don't want to make promises because we have to have approval for us to initiate, right? And then we want to continue the bond website development. That really, I think, Ricky, is really the bond dashboard that we're talking about. So those are the things coming up. I think I feel like I had a good 3 weeks. And I think the team they're doing all the work. I have my subject matter experts, but what my expertise is that I know how to do projects. I've done tons of them, and what's more, I love doing it. I saw that when Ricky had an ad about this particular position, he said, "Did you geek out on projects?" I was like, that's me. I'm that one. So anyway, last slide, I think, is questions. I think Ricky, is the ask today is to see if we can move forward with these projects. And the reason why this is important is because, especially for those HVAC, we need to order the equipment. We got to get the go, because the money is going to be here, remember, by the 22nd. And from what I've been told by Mr. Gregg and Mr. Damon, these are plug and play. So they're less risk. There's not a lot of interdependencies. I mean, we can go and get that done. And while they're, implementing, we're going to be doing the planning. So it's like this cycle that we'll be doing. So if no other questions, I appreciate, go ahead.
Only because I lived through the last bond election, all the construction
Sure.
at the schools I was at. Who is going to be your on-site person that's your contact person, or who you're working with? Will it be an assistant principal, or are you going through the principals to get the feedback and to also say, hey, we'll be here to do these projects?
I mean, we have multiple layers. I mean, we have a construction manager that's making sure the interest of the district is happening with the actual professionals that we're hiring, the vendors. But we also be working with principals and have different feedback loops. So that would be my next phase, and I told Ricky, I'm going to do a full communications plan. That's what I'm used to. So how are we communicating and working with the communication department. I'm not saying I'm taking the place of that. I don't want to go on record saying that. But looking at things to make sure that all your stakeholders are being communicated to at the right level of communication. And so, yes, we'll be making sure, though, boots on the ground, that the principal and whoever else we choose, they may want assistant principal. I mean, it depends. But whoever that contact is, having that feedback loop to make sure done is done. I tell people, as I used to teach project management as well, there's only one done.
Yeah.
And that goes by looking at your RFP and the response and what was negotiated with the contract. That's the done that we're looking for.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think her question's important. I teach in TUSD, so if somebody was coming to replace an HVAC in my classroom or near my classroom, it would be very disruptive. So I think I appreciate your question. Communication will be very important, especially towards the end of the year when we have all sorts of testing happening.
Absolutely. And I can just tell you what I've done at TPS. We did lots of enterprise-wide projects. What you typically do is have your schedule, and you put your schedule out where everybody can see it, or at least internally can see it, and they can go and look and see when their school's up. And the school needs to, adjust accordingly, because you have to do the work, and some work can't be done necessarily in the evenings. So, but no, that's why I was saying a communications plan is super important. It's all different levels of communication, and especially with you as a teacher, make sure you give me any instances or things that you think that would be good from the communication standpoint. But that's the reason we did it. We also sent emails the day before, just different things to say reminders, and don't forget this is happening this week at your school, blah, blah, blah.
To Ms. Coleman's point too, I think.
I can't hear you. Can you speak in the...
Hello? Okay. To Ms. Coleman's point too, I think there needs to be an avenue for the people who live in the neighborhoods around the school to either voice concerns if there's work going on when school's not in session. Like, I would hate for office staff or administration to be inundated by neighborhood public based on something that they have no control over. Like, if there's construction crews on the site, I just think that neighborhood involvement is incredibly important. Like, looking back at what happened with Sam Hughes with the fence that was trying to go in there and it turns into a huge debacle. I think that people who live in neighborhoods near schools are a very vocal part of our community, and it's very important because some things might change their, the estimate of their house, if they're putting in, like when we had a huge rollout of solar panels across the district and many trees were cut down, that was a huge problem for a lot of people in the neighborhood. And the installation of large solar panels in neighborhoods. Like, I just think that though their concerns are valid, though we might not be able to do anything about it, they should have the opportunity to be heard, whether that be like a form submission online that be on our dashboard or like a hotline or something that they could call. I just think we need to provide that to the community as well, outside of just who's in the district.
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
I think that's a great point, and I think, the way we'd probably want, I think the way we might want to handle that is make sure, like you're saying, to get a hold of the principal so that they can get a hold of the PTO, I think it is, or the site council, I think that's it, yeah, so that we can get the word out to the community. I think that'd be a really good way to handle that. I'm glad you brought it up, but we'll have to make sure that happens.
Yeah, and that's the, and so maybe one of the things that I could do too for line of sight is when I work with the communications department and myself as a project program manager, when we have the draft of the communications plan for you to take a look at it, it's basically very simple, like the frequency, who's the key stakeholders, what are you going to be, the medium you're going to use. It's just, but it's super important. I was explaining to someone that the highest, one of the ways that projects fail the most is communications. It's usually not the thing, the service or the product. It's they didn't communicate about it, or the expectations were not clear. If one person is expecting a green car and you give them a red car, even though it's a car, one was expecting something. So thanks for that. It was one other question.
I just wanted to know, you want a motion to approve moving ahead on phase 1? Is that what the motion would be?
Yeah, on the quarter 1, October 11th.
Okay, I'll motion to move forward on quarter 1.
I just have a quick discussion question. Does that include the things that are in green and in black?
Only green.
Only green.
Only green. Do we need to bring that back up? Can you bring that up just so we're clear? So it's those 4 things that's also in the presentation, but I want to
And while we're bringing it out, if I can just add something, I
Yes,
know
sir.
when people come on and do something like at Doolin, we had security cameras put in. We had very little say on where those went. And there are unusable cameras because they're in blind spots, and there's blind spots where there's no cameras. Same thing, my concern is with the fence and gates, that we communicate with the site administrators, because we know the site and we know the trouble spots and we know where things need to go. And I hope we don't get to the point where we push through the bond because we got to get this done, and they come out and they just put it up and don't consult us. So is there avenues or is there a process that site administrators are going to have a say that we can talk about where we really need these things?
Yes, I'm going to say yes.
Thank you, 'cause
That's, I mean, to me, that's the way we've always handled bonds. Now, I'm not saying that necessarily administrators get everything they want. I think that we have to have a conversation about it, and that's the way we've handled it. Am I saying anything out of order, team? Okay, so how are we going to make sure that happens? Because that's my job. That's part of what I do, is to be able to manage the bond and to do it at the best level possible. And that's where your involvement comes into, to be the eyes and ears. I'm hoping for advocacy. I'm hoping that you are our advocates to be able to make sure that things are happening right. If they're not happening right, letting us know. And for us to work as a partnership. At least that's my hope. Ricky, is that the right way to be looking at this? I know I'm new on the job, but the other thing I do want to mention to you guys, my doctorate is in service culture. So what that means is that I wrote 100 and something pages about what is good customer service. Service culture is customer service to the next level. It's trying to treat people like family. Now, I hope everybody's family's good here. I don't know.
No.
But imagine this, that you're wanting to do that extra. You're wanting to make people feel like they matter and that what you're doing, you try to do at the best ability. And so that's why I said go slow to go fast. I've done a lot of projects and I've had people overrule and say, no, we got to do this now. And trust me, it doesn't go well in the end. And you cannot do great communication if you're doing it super fast, where you haven't considered everyone, you haven't done the feedback loops. People usually have to hear things 3 times for them to get it. So just so I finish up, because I know everybody's probably dwindling, HVAC, 14 schools, the marquees, 8, the defibrillators, I think that needs to be updated. I'm sorry. That one should be the 67 or 69, whichever one that was on that detail, because it changed. And then the technology to get those laptops, active boards, chargers, hotspots. I didn't put schools because it's district, the district, but it's things that need to happen soon for the kiddos.
Yeah.
That's what we're approving. We'll come back in May with other things to do. And we can have a little bit more discussion about schools. But if we want to get this done, we need to try to get moving on this quickly. So I think the last thing on the presentation is questions, which we've been peppering that all the way through. So
I'd like to second the motion by Ms. Bell to approve these.
Is it on? Discussion, would anybody like to have a discussion about voting in favor for the Q1 proposed projects?
Can you
Mr. Gonzalez?
Can you repeat the motion, please? What was the motion?
The motion was.
Motion to move ahead on the projects in green for October 11th. Is that right?
At the last meeting, I think I heard staff say that we couldn't make any decisions unless we had a charter approved. No? Did I mishear something?
No, I think I do remember something about we can't do action items or approval until the charter is approved. I think I
believe-
remember that as well.
There was a question as to whether we could proceed, and the answer from legal counsel was that you can proceed without a charter, but you're not going to have the organized rules that you've been debating in order to conduct business. But you can still conduct business. You still have a quorum. You're still committee of the board, all of the, but you're not going to have, if you wanted to remove, Red because he asked too many questions, there's no method to do that, right? Because there's no charter.
Yeah, I don't have any problem voting on it and approving it. I just want to make sure that we're doing it legally. I see legal isn't here, but I thought I heard you say at the last meeting that we couldn't make any decisions unless a charter was approved.
I don't recall that statement, only because I verified it with legal counsel, Mr. Ross, that if you do not have a charter, and I believe I stated this at the last meeting, if you do not have a charter, that doesn't preclude you from conducting business. You just don't have the rules in order to guide some of the decisions that you have to make: elections, removals, quorum, replacements of members, things of that nature, just the housekeeping, if you will.
Yeah, well, we have a quorum. Yeah.
Should we go ahead and?
Okay.
Let's go
Are you
ahead.
okay with it?
Madam Chair, and I apologize, I haven't learned your name yet. I'm sorry I wasn't here for the first meeting. May I ask your name so I can address you properly?
Erica Miranda Carter.
Miranda Carter?
Miranda Carter.
Miranda Carter. Okay, so I just want to be able to address you as Chair Miranda Carter.
Yes.
Yeah, if I'm getting that close enough.
Thank you.
I just want to clarify one thing. For votes, we have 3 options. Is that correct? We can either yes, no, or abstain?
Correct.
Okay, so I just wanted to mention I will be abstaining on this, and the only reason is because I have unresolved questions about the LED lights. That's all. I have no principal concern otherwise, but in case anyone.
There's no
There's no
LED
LED lights
on-
on this.
Well, so they're involved in the marquees. I believe I'm correct in that.
Yeah, the marquees will have LED lighting.
Right.
Okay, so can we go ahead and do a roll call vote, Ms. Barboa?
Catherine Arvizu,
Yes.
Don Bell,
Yes.
Montserrat Caballero, okay, she was on Zoom. Cindy Coleman,
Yes.
Luis Gonzalez,
Aye.
Red Morrow,
Yes.
Raghu Nandan,
Yes.
Peter Norquist,
Abstain.
Tiffany Rogers,
Yes.
Delia Sotelo,
Yes.
Sophia Blue,
Yes.
Erica Miranda Carter.
Yes. Motion passes with 1 abstain. 1 abstain, Mr.
One
Norquist?
abstention. Yeah.
Yes.
I just want to thank you for your attention and allowing me to express what the team is. We're super excited, and I look forward to our next meeting. Don't forget your homework.
Thank you for all the information, Ms. Carter. Dr. Carter, I apologize. Okay. No, future. Okay, so that moves us to item 7.01, future meeting dates and agenda items. Our next scheduled date, meeting is third Thursday of May, which will be May 23rd.
And Chair Miranda Carter.
Yes.
One question, only for personal planning purposes, and again, I apologize if this was discussed last month when I wasn't able to attend. Do you know what the plans are for meeting during the summer months, June, July, and August? I read somewhere that those were optional, and I'm just wondering if that is on our radar yet.
What is on the charter that we would like to have approved, and I think we can discuss that once we've approved it.
Okay, okay.
I think pending on the projects that may be presented to us and what's ahead, we can talk about it a little bit more. So should we go ahead and add, is there anything that we need to add on the
Madam Chair.
agenda item? Oh,
Sorry.
apologies.
For third Thursday I'm showing would be the 16th. Is that correct? Not the
Did I look at my
23rd?
calendar wrong?
I just want to make sure I have the
16th,
right date.
you're right. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, it's okay. I just want to make sure. Thank you.
May 16th.
I had
So,
a
would-
question.
go
Is there a
ahead.
way we could like prioritize the discussion about meeting during the summer? Just because, like my colleague here, I would like to, plan my summer out, whether should I be in Tucson or not be in Tucson. So is there a way we could prioritize that conversation at the next meeting?
At the next meeting. And if we can get a list of your recommendations, Mr. Gonzalez, email to Ms. Borboa, and so we can all have, get a glance at them before our next meeting so we can be prepared for it. Would that be okay? And definitely we'll prioritize that conversation next meeting. Go ahead and adjourn. Motion to adjourn? Okay. So, motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second.
Okay, meeting adjourns at 3:35. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, you're very welcome. Thank you. Thank you for.